Can everyone see my screen there?
It's looking good.
Excellent. Okay, so Amazon Personalize is a AI service that is part of the machine learning stack at AWS, and Amazon has a rich heritage in personalization. And what we see as we work with customers who are adding personalization to their applications, these are some of the business outcomes that they're looking to achieve. So acquisition and retention of new customers, increasing their user engagement. So this could be through KPIs such as click-through rate or dwell time on pages or app utilization. They're also looking to use personalization to increase the efficiencies of revenue, such as on their digital marketing spend. And then one specific use case that Personalize is particularly strong at is in the area of discoverability. So looking to improve their customers' ability to find the products that they're looking for. And Personalize is purpose built for handling long tail catalogs where it's difficult for customers to find what they want sometimes. As I mentioned, Amazon's been in the personalization space for more than 20 years. So this first screenshot is our first humble beginning of personalizing similar item recommendations on our product detail page. And that was back in 1998. And since then, we've been continuing to refine the algorithms and approaches that we use that now span every channel as well as every product that Amazon has certain elements of personalization. And we found that through machine learning that there isn't a single model or algorithm that solves the personalization challenge. It actually takes multiple algorithms and multiple approaches. And as you'll see with Personalize, we package that into a service for developers and AWS customers to use in their applications. So diving a little bit deeper into how Amazon Personalize works, you start by bringing in your data about how your customers interact or your users interact with your items. The first data set type is user events or interactions. And this data set basically represents how your users are interacting with the items for which you want to make recommendations. So in an e-commerce application, this could be product views, add to carts, or purchase type of events. In a video on demand use case, it could be watching a video or a show or adding a show to a watch list. For a news site, it could be reading an article or leaving a comment on an article. Personalize is industry agnostic, so the events that you choose to send to Personalize are specific to your application and your domain. This is the only required data set, by the way, for Personalize. All of the algorithms are based on behavioral data to be able to make predictions on what users will interact with. The next data set type is data about your items. And this is optional, but it can be very useful in situations such as cold starting recommendations for new items. So if you have a catalog that is constantly evolving, you're adding new products to or new items to, then rich item metadata allows Personalize to recommend those cold items to users to start learning about their interest in them. So this could be attributes such as category, size, style, price point, basically any metadata fields that will help Personalize better understand the behavioral data in that top data set. And then the third data set type is information about your users. So this could be their age, location, their subscription tier in your product. Again, really anything that helps Personalize better understand the behavior in that top data set. Once you have these data sets prepared, that you can import them in bulk as CSV files into Amazon S3, and you can upload them into Personalize using import jobs. You can also stream these data sets into the service in real time. So a common pattern for customers is they'll bulk upload to sort of bootstrap Personalize with the initial historical data and exports from their catalog and user system. They'll train models and Personalize, and then they'll transition to a streaming input where they'll stream new events, new items, and new users into the service to capture those updates going forward. Once the data sets are imported into Personalize, then a private custom model is trained based on your data sets. And all of the steps that Personalize does behind the scenes are what you typically would find in a machine learning pipeline. So Personalize will inspect your data sets. It will identify the features that will drive that are relevant for training a model based on the behavior. It'll select hyperparameters. It'll optimize your model, so you can push the easy button essentially with Personalize and have Personalize determine the best performing hyperparameters for your data set and the algorithm that you choose. And then Personalize will host your model in an auto scaling endpoint. So Personalize provisions all the resources to basically all the requests that you throw at Personalize. It will auto scale to meet that demand and then scale back down for you. So you don't have to provision any servers, no resources at all. Personalize will take care of that for you. So there's three core use cases that Amazon Personalize focuses on, and I'll cover each of these three here, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper, a little lower level, some of the sub use cases you can build on top of these core use cases. The first is sort of the canonical personalization use case called user personalization, where given a user, you want to recommend products or items that this user would interact with. And this is a screenshot of the demo. Actually, I'm going to show you a live demo of this retail demo store platform. It's essentially an e-commerce storefront with fictitious products and categories and shoppers. So when a new user hits your e-commerce site, they're a new or cold user. We refer to them as cold users because we don't have any historical data upon which to make recommendations for that user. And so what Personalize will do, it'll fall back on recommending popular products across all users. So it's a good default use case or a good default behavior for Personalize, where you don't have to build any logic into your application. Personalize will fall back to popular products. Once you stream a few events into Personalize, so as the user is clicking around or engaging with content, you stream those to Personalize, and recommendations are immediately personalized in real time. So after one or two events in 1 or 2 seconds, the next time you get recommendations from Personalize, the recommendations will reflect those new events that you streamed into the service. This is something that's if you built a recommendation system directly, say in SageMaker, our machine learning environment for building, getting more hands-on end-to-end building of machine learning models. This real-time capability that I just described is something you wouldn't get out of the box with SageMaker. So this is a good example of how Personalize is purpose-built for personalization, and this real-time capability is part of that. The next core use case is similar item recommendations, and this is using the Sims recipe or similar items. And this is typically implemented on, say, a product detail page where a user is looking at a particular item and you want to recommend other items similar to that item based on user behavior. So this is not doing content-based filtering. It's actually using a collaborative filtering, an item-to-item collaborative filtering approach based on user behavior of users who interacted with this item as well as interacted with other items. And then the third core use case is personalized ranking. And this, the intuition here is given a user and a list of items. I want to personalize the order of those items for that user. And so this example here in the screenshot is where we display featured products in this sample storefront. This is a list of products in the database that have been marked as featured, and we want to personalize the order of those products for each user that comes and visits the featured products page. It's also popular to use this in front of a search engine. So you want to take the results from your search engine and maybe personalize the order of each page as you display the results to your users. But really, this can be used anywhere you have a list of items that maybe are human curated or associated with a category, products in a category. You can use personalized ranking to personalize the order so the most relevant products are at the top of the page for each user. So looking a little closer at some of the key features of Personalize, again, that cold user behavior that makes it specifically effective at personalization. The first is user impressions. So this is where Personalize is able to model on impression data If you recall some of the examples of events that I used earlier, as far as product clicks or add to carts or purchases, those are explicitly positive. That's positive behavior. But impressions is more neutral behavior, where you presented the user with, say, 10 items to choose from, and they chose to engage maybe with the second item. Well, they're still Personalized can still learn from those other 9 items that the user did not engage with, to learn about those interests of those other items. And so we call that modeling on impression data. Item exploration is where you can um, control the weighting of recommending items that don't have much or any user behavior to draw upon. So that's that cold item recommendation, where it's a new item to your catalog and you want to start recommending those new items to users. You can also control that weighting to the exploitation side of the algorithm, where you say, I want to strongly weight based on relevance for my users, based on what we know about their interests. Then comes filtering, which you can filter based on events or item or user metadata. And this is where you can include or exclude items from being recommended based on business rules that you can define in the service. And what we were finding was customers, when they initially started using Personalize when it was first released, is a lot of customers were building logic on top of the recommendations that came back from Personalize to do this filtering activity. So we added a feature to Personalize so that customers wouldn't have to do that. They could write the filter expressions, which I'll show you some examples of them, but they're like a SQL where clause. So you can think of it as a way to put guardrails on what recommendations are brought back from Personalize. And then cold starting, I mentioned cold starting users, and I've also talked about cold starting items, and those are two different type of cold start scenarios that Personalize is able to surface recommendations for new users and new items automatically for you. So looking a little closer at a few of those features, modeling on impression data, this is sort of is going through the scenarios. Let's say we have a mobile app on the left, and I have Personalized model trained and deployed as a campaign on the right, which is that inference endpoint we saw earlier. The API call to get recommendations out of Personalize is the Get Recommendations API. And what's returned from Personalize is an item list that includes a list of or an item ID for each entry in the array, as well as a score. The item ID is the ID that you provided when you trained the model. So these are the same IDs that come back. They can be a numeric value like we see here. It could be a unique identifier, basically a database auto increment. Whatever you're using to uniquely identify your items, that's what comes back. The score is calculated by Personalize based on the relevance of that particular item to this user. And then the recommendation ID at the bottom is part of modeling on impression data. Is you need to echo back what the user engaged with after you presented it. And so we'll see how that recommendation ID can make a round trip. It's sort of a moniker that represents all these items here. So we present these products in our mobile application. And then the user, say, engages with product number 8, that shirt in the upper right hand corner. And what we'll do here is we'll send back an event to Personalize, indicating that user engaged with product 8. But if you notice, the impression field and recommendation ID at the bottom of this event list is indicating that 4, 8, 7, 1, 3, and 2 were part of the impressions, but they interacted with item number 8 of that. The item ID indicates it's item number 8. So you can either provide the impressions as a list of item IDs, or you can send the recommendation ID that came from the Get Recommendations request. And that is sent to Personalize using the Put Events API. So then the user, when the user engages with that item, this is your interactions data set here. This is what the data set looks like. It's in the CSV. We have a user ID, item ID, the timestamp that the user engaged with that interaction. The event type, in this situation, I'm using product click, could be whatever event type you choose. And then you can see the various impression strings that were in the historical data set to train the model. When that impression data is sent into the put events API, it adds to that data set, adding that user ID 5 interacted with 8. Here was the date stamp and the impression string. So that's how that event gets incorporated into the interactions data set. And when you retrain, then that interaction will be included in subsequent retraining. The balancing exploration and exploitation is you can think of it like a teeter-totter here, where you can more heavily weigh exploration. So if you want a user experience based on the model where you want to have your users discover something new, it's an extemporaneous or some serendipity, right? You want to find something new. You can create a campaign that has high exploration, and it'll recommend different items if the user is looking for something new to explore, versus exploitation, where you can recommend items based on what we know of relevance. So obviously, if you weight this more towards exploration, it's a good match for fast-moving catalogs and discovery use cases, as I mentioned. And then a lower exploration weight is more stable catalogs that don't change much, or you want a guided use case, that's based on highly relevant recommendations. It should be noted that this is only supported in the user personalization recipe. So of those 3 use cases that I went through, user personalization, similar items, and personalized ranking, this capability is only in that user personalization recipe. Filtering on business rule recommendations based on business rules. So you can include items. Some examples include maybe you have your catalog has a lot of repeat buys where it's a consumable type product and they want to maybe purchase items again. You can say to personalize only include recommendations for items that the user has previously purchased. Items released in a given time period. So you could have a timestamp in your item metadata, and then do in your filter expression, you could limit items that were created within that time frame. You can filter based on ratings, or it's very popular to use filters to restrict recommendations to a particular category, say genre for movies, or a category on an e-commerce site. The flip side is you can exclude items from being recommended. So for instance, out of stock items is really common. I don't want to recommend products that the user can't purchase. Purchased items from top picks. So if I have a top picks and I don't want to recommend them to buy something they've already purchased, you can use a filter for that. In the video on demand space, you can use filters to control titles based on the audience rating, say for a movie or a TV show. And then maybe items that are not included in the subscription tier that the current user is subscribed to. So here's some examples of what these filters actually look like. And I mentioned earlier, they look a lot like SQL where clauses. So you can filter on interactions. In this case, I'm excluding items where in the interactions data set, there's an event type of purchased for the current user. So that will exclude purchased products for that user. You can also create filters based on items, the items data set. So here I'm including items where the category is in dollar category. So this is a dynamic filter where I can pass in the category to filter on at runtime. And the price is less than 100 and it's currently in stock. So you can use compound logic here with your filters. And here's an example that filters based on user metadata. So I'm including items where the access type is in paid and the current user is in a membership tier of gold or platinum. You can chain these filters together, multiple expressions. So here we're combining, we're saying including items that are currently part of this promotion, this dollar promo dynamic value, but we're excluding items that from the promoted items that the user's already purchased. Cold starting users, we'll take that same sample mobile application here. We have a personalized campaign that we can call get recommendations for, and new cold users get popular items. Then when that user interacts with an item, we'll call put events to send that item to a personalized event tracker. And that personalized event tracker is going to influence future recommendations from that campaign in real time. So when we call get recommendations again, we're going to get interest that are learned based on those prior interactions. Cold starting items is, again, we'll start with a mobile app. We have a campaign. We'll call get recommendations. And now maybe we have a catalog system over here. Like this is where we're managing our products in a catalog management system. Let's say we add a new product. So we call put items to incorporate that in the items data set. The campaign is updated on a periodic basis in the background to include those new items. Then when we call get recommendations again, we'll see that that new product is included in recommendations. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and switch over to a demo. And this is for a project that you saw some screenshots for called the Retail Demo Store. This project is publicly available on GitHub under AWS Samples Retail Demo Store. And it's intended it's an end-to-end full stack sample web application that is loaded with a few thousand products across 17 categories. And there's 6,000 fictitious shoppers, as we'll see here in a moment. And so you can deploy this right from GitHub. Here's the architecture. So there's a lot going on in the architecture. Personalize is one of the key components, but it has a full CI/CD pipeline. It uses CloudFront as a CDN. It uses ECS Fargate to host microservices for all of the domain elements in the application. It uses Cognito for authentication and Pinpoint for messaging. So it's a good sample of a full stack application. There's several workshops that are bundled in the project, and I'll show you how those are deployed and how you can access those. But to deploy this project, you would just click on one of the launch stack buttons, which will send you into CloudFormation in your AWS account.
Hey, James, I
There's
think you're only
Yeah.
sharing PowerPoint right now, so we're not seeing the browser.
Oh, okay. Let me change my share. Sorry about that. How's that?
Much better.
Okay, sorry about that. So I'll go back to the top. Yeah, again, this is on GitHub under AWS Samples Retail Demo Store. And here's the architecture slide that I was just talking through of all the components in the architecture. So the ECS part, the CI/CD pipeline through code commit, code pipeline, and code build. Here's Personalize, Elasticsearch is used, Pinpoint, Incognito, as well as the Amplify client-side library that helps us stream events back to the backend. Here's the workshops that are listed, and I'll show you how these are deployed in the project. There's some partner integrations as well, so some ISVs that we work closely with Personalize, and in the retail space, we have some workshops built into this platform that show how to use AWS services with these partners. And then here is the launch stack buttons that you can use to launch this whole application in your AWS account via CloudFormation. Once the CloudFormation finishes, within the outputs, you have a web URL, which is the CloudFront URL for the CDN for the web application. And what that looks like is that deployed CloudFront instance. And you can see here that I'm not signed in right now. So it's sign in is indicated here. And so popular products are being recommended. If I already have an account here, so I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And I mentioned there were 6,000 fictitious shoppers loaded into the system, and you can select one of these shoppers by selecting an age range and a primary interest. So once you submit here, it'll bring back one of those shoppers. You can confirm that shopper. So these primary interests, the way they work in this project is we use these interests to generate interactions, the historical interactions data set that we saw on the slides. And then we train the models and Personalize based on those generated interactions. And then Personalize takes over making recommendations from the models from that point forward. So this gives us kind of an indication of some historical browsing behavior for this particular user. So for Patrick, we see a lot of products from the electronics category. We see some footwear items also being recommended. And then in the featured products, this is where we have those products in the database that are marked as featured. You can see that the electronics, outdoors products, and footwear are towards the front of the list, where products from other categories are further down. So that's an example of the personalized ranking. And you can click on, there's a demo guide that comes with this application that provides a lot of explanation of the different personalized aspects, as well as there's pinpoint incorporated with personalized SMS and email, abandoned cart, shows you how you'd implement those features in your application. So when I go to featured product, we'll see the featured products in a larger list here, but we're also using personalized ranking here in the search box, where we're taking the results from Elasticsearch and re-ranking those products before displaying them in the dropdown. To demonstrate a filter, we have a filter in the retail demo store for filtering purchase products. So let's simulate purchasing this pair of headphones with the yellow background in the picture. So you add it to your cart, and this is all it's a mock checkout, so it's not a real checkout. So you don't have to put in a credit card or anything. So when we placed our order here, what happened is, once I placed the order, is an event was sent back to Personalize, to the Personalize event tracker. Order completed is the event we use, and there's a filter set up in Personalize to exclude purchase products from being recommended. So now if we go back to the home page, we see that those headphones with the yellow background are no longer being recommended, and they were on the front of the featured products list before. They're not there anymore. So that's showing how the filter is being used. And then let's switch shoppers to a different interest category. Let's say we did footwear before. Let's say jewelry, and there aren't shoppers in all combinations. Let's do apparel. There we go. So apparel, footwear, and accessories. So you can see the product recommendations are different based on Nathan's interest here, from a historical perspective. I want to demonstrate the cold user next. And do you see this incognito window, or do I need to reshare?
Nope, we see it. Looks good.
Okay. I'm going to go back and get the URL. So now I'm using via incognito, I'm opening a brand new window, brand new session, cold user, never seen. I wonder why this is showing me inspired by your shopping trends. Maybe I had another incognito window open. Yeah, I did. So let me try this again. Okay, here we go. So when you first come to the retail demo store, it gives you this welcome screen that explains what it is and how to use it. You can create an account through Cognito, the AWS service Cognito, or sign in. I'm going to skip that for now to demonstrate the cold anonymous user path. And so you can see I'm not signed in. It's showing me trending products, and it's recommending popular products. And so this trending products, it wouldn't make sense to say inspired by your shopping trends, because I just visited the site for the very first time. But let's say I'm interested in in footwear products. So I'm going to click on a few products in the footwear, different footwear products, and then go back to the home page. And you can see my recommendations are already being updated to include footwear. If I clicked on additional products, these recommendations would continue to get more and more accurate based on my interest. So that shows you how quickly in real time Personalize is able to adapt to your interests. I think that's make sure. Oh, there's one other integration here from a personalized perspective that I think might be interesting is how you can use personalized together with other AWS services. And so there's an integration inside of the retail demo store with Amazon IVS, or Interactive Video Service. And it's basically a service that allows you to um, employ a or deploy a Amazon Live type experience. And so this, what you see the video here, these are pre-made videos of performers that are demonstrating various products. And we're using Personalize down below for similar products, as well as displaying featured products using a discount behavior from the user to recommend discounted products. So this shows you how you can use Personalize with other services such as IVS. Um, I mentioned the pinpoint integration in here as well. So on the homepage, we had the ability to sign up for text alerts. And so this uses pinpoint SMS that will pull a personalized recommendation from Personalize and include it in a pinpoint message. So those are two ways that Personalize can be used with other services. The third here in this application, oh, the assistant hasn't been set up, but there's a workshop in the back end I'll show you here in a second that will allow you to go through adding Lex chatbot, Lex powered chatbot that also has the ability to pull personalized recommendations via a Lambda function in Lex and surface that in a chat experience. And speaking of the workshops, this is the last bit I'll show you, and we can shift to some Q&A. Is when you launch this project in your account, you get a SageMaker notebook instance that we use to host a series of workshops that will walk you through step by step adding these capabilities to the default base storefront experience. And so when you launch this product or deploy it in your account, it has no personalization, no pinpoint, no Lex, no IVS, none of that is there. But we have workshops that you can step through that will add those capabilities to the storefront as you complete them. So it's a great way to see how you learn how to build something and then you see the effects right away. Um, so here are the notebooks that are deployed in the SageMaker notebook instance. So I'm in Jupyter Lab here. And you can see there, I have a few of them open. Here's the one for search that adds Elasticsearch as the search engine behind that search component. And if you're not familiar with the Jupyter Notebook, it's basically a collection of markdown cells and code cells that will step you through performing some sort of function. So in this case, we're creating an Elasticsearch index. We're indexing all the products from the product service in that Elasticsearch index. We're doing some testing against the index, and then finally, we're enabling that for the storefront to then use through the search microservice will start using this Elasticsearch index as soon as you finish this. The personalization, the Personalize workshop goes through from starting from zero to a fully trained launch campaigns with filters, event tracker, and everything you need with Personalize. And so this steps you through all the code you need to extract, creates an S3 bucket to hold the CSVs. We extract all the products from the products microservice. We extract all the users from the users microservice. We build the CSVs or that interaction data set here. And then we upload those it does some exploratory data analysis here. Then those are uploaded to Personalize to a dataset group via datasets and schemas. All the code steps basically you would have to go through to do this in an application. We're doing that right here in this notebook. So it kind of tells you step by step everything that you need to do there. There's other workshops just to note. There's one, a whole series of workshops on experimentation. And so there's a whole framework built into the retail demo store on doing A/B testing, multi-arm bandit testing, and interleave experiment testing in the storefront. So you can test personalization and see what the results are on business metrics. There's an integration with Optimizely that shows you how you would do it with Optimizely as well. In messaging, there's a workshop for Pinpoint and Braze. Conversational is where the Lex workshop is. And then under customer data platforms, there's a workshop with Segment, the CDP segment. So I think I will stop there and see if there's any questions, and I can go back into sharing my screen if necessary.
I say that's a pretty incredible demo retail store setup there. It really proves that we have zero free will when we're browsing around on the internet. That's incredible. So that like cloud formation setup, when you click that button and you say launch into my region, what's that cost just idle?
That's a good question. There is cost associated with deploying that stack. Probably the largest cost is Personalize itself. So if we step back and talk about pricing for Personalize, it generally falls into three dimensions. So the first dimension is the amount of data that you upload. So those CSVs that you upload for the historical, as well as any events, users, and items that you stream into the service. That's the first dimension of pricing. It's usually the smallest part of the overall cost of Personalize. It's typically pretty nominal. The second dimension is the training time. So when you train your models and Personalize, we charge you based on the training hours for the resources that were spun up to train that model. And then the third element is inference. And this is where you get recommendations out of the trained model. There's two ways you can get recommendations out of Personalize. What I demonstrated in the retail demo store is real-time recommendations using campaigns. There's also batch recommendations, which are a really good match for downstream batch processes such as email marketing, right? If you're wanting to send 5 million emails out, you want to personalize each one of them, you can create a batch recommendations job that includes all your users in a file in S3, and then you point Personalize at that, and Personalize will create an output file that has recommendations for all 5 million of those users. You don't need a campaign for that. It's much more cost effective, and it's better for that sort of downstream process. Um, the campaign, getting back to campaign costs, and the largest expense is there's three for the retail demo store. There's three campaigns providing those three core use cases. So it was user personalization on the homepage, so that inspired by your shopping trends, the similar item recommendations on the product detail page, and the re-ranking, the personalized ranking. So there's three campaigns behind each of those use cases. At idle, it's about I think it's $145 a month for each campaign to sit idle at the lowest provision level. So when you create a campaign and Personalize, you can set what's called the minimum provision TPS, transactions per second, where you're telling Personalize, I want you to provision resources to satisfy this minimum number, this floor of traffic that I'm expecting to send to that campaign. And Personalize will not provision any lower than that TPS. It will scale up from that, but it will never go below that. And so our guidance to customers is to set that value as low as possible, ideally at 1, which is the lowest value you can use, and let Personalize auto scale for you. But when that campaign is sitting idle and you're not sending requests to it, you're paying for it, a lot like an EC2 instance that's sitting there. If you're not running an app on it, it doesn't matter. You're still, it's still running in your account. So it's a good way to think about campaigns.
And like in this demo or just in general, how often are you doing the generation of the model?
The guidance that we give to customers it depends. I know it's an unsatisfying answer, but is generally it's weekly is the guidance we give, but no more frequently than daily. And the reason why you can get away with weekly or even longer, maybe every 2 weeks, is there's that user personalization recipe with the that was learning in real time, and it would do the cold item recommendations I was describing. Is Personalize is actually updating that solution version and campaign in the background for you every 2 hours, and you're not charged for that. So that's not a retraining. It's just Personalize is incorporating those new items and the impression data that's sent in. You still need to retrain periodically though to update the weights in the model. So, but because it's doing those auto updates for you during the week or every several days for 2 weeks, you can push your retrainings out further and do them less frequently.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is do you have to retrain completely when you add a new item to your catalog? But it sounds
No,
like
you
you
do not.
don't.
Yeah, that's correct. For the cold item recommendations, the system will pull, for the user personalization, will pull those new items in automatically for you. Now, if 2 hours is not frequent enough for you, you can manually do that lighter weight update. You can trigger that, say, on an hourly basis to get
Hmm.
those new items surfaced more frequently to your users. But automatically, it will be done every 2 hours.
So if you were doing a more batch instead of the real-time campaign, like instead of real-time campaign, if I did the batch operation on Personalize because I was going to do like
Mhm.
the pinpoint, or maybe I just do daily recommendations in the site in general, can I still track the user's behavior as they're progressing through the site? And then the next day when I regenerate on a batch, is that's the micro, that's that lightweight training you're talking about?
So you can, whether you're doing batch all the time, 100%, or the real
Mm-hmm.
time, or a mixture, is you can still stream the events in to the event tracker using that put events API. And what Personalize is doing is it's doing two things with those events. It's updating, if you have any campaigns, it's updating the recommendations for those campaigns in real time, but it's also saving those events for subsequent retraining.
Okay.
So when you do retrain, it will aggregate both your bulk uploaded data set and any events you've streamed in into that training job.
Is it possible to get an export of the training data that you've pushed into Personalize, or do you need to save it off separate, like kind of fork it and save my
Mhm.
part, my copy of the data?
Yeah. So as the service stands today, there's no way to get data out of your data sets. That is a feature that's coming in the service. So you'll be able to export back out. What we recommend to customers that are building, say, an event streaming architecture or in front of Personalize is to use something like Kinesis in front of Personalize, and then have a consumer that will update Personalize with the put events, and then maybe Kinesis Data Firehose to persist your events to S3,
Mm-hmm.
so that if maybe you wanted to replay those events into a new data set group with a different maybe metadata configuration, you have all those events in S3. It's very affordable to store them there, and then you can replay them back in.
Okay.
You can also do, other analytics, right? If you want to do analytics on top of your clickstream data, having that in S3, you have Athena, you have QuickSight, you have a lot of options. You can pull it into EMR, Glue. You can process that data for other purposes other than Personalize as well.
All right, I'm going to pause my questions. I still have some more in case someone else has got questions.
I do.
Go, Josh.
Yeah. So my business case is different than any of the ones that you've talked about. I work in logistics, and so I want to match, let's say, truck drivers up with loads that can move, and those loads that can move are items, but they're very short lived. A few days. Um, does it know how to correlate, like if an item goes away, an item that looks similar but maybe has some slightly different features? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So are the users in this context, are they able to select those items, or is it something that is selected for them using, say, some sort of optimization approach based on you're the best person to?
They select it themselves. They
Okay.
essentially they buy it.
Yep.
um so yeah.
Yeah, so then absolutely. What I was getting at is are the users indicating a preference or interest in an item by selecting it, some sort of event, right? And if that answer to that is yes, then this could be a good fit for Personalize, because you have that interaction data that's key of users interacting with items. Then if you have good metadata on those items, if they have some attributes, that Personalize can key off of to combine with that behavioral data, then this could be a good use for you for your use case.
Even if those items die within a few days, 36 hours.
Yep. So what you can do is as you introduce new items, that's the cold item recommendations,
Mhm.
and then you can call put items to update, say, now no longer available or already taken or whatever your you
Sure.
know. And
Sure.
then once you update that, the filters that you would apply, saying, I only want you to recommend items that are available, your filter would key off of that metadata field that you're updating based on some sort of, back end activity that's happening.
Okay, and then can one more question? Can the metadata associated with an item, can it be location information like lat and lawns? What kind of data types can be associated to a piece of information, to an item?
Yeah. So the different data types generally fall into two categories: numerical and categorical. So categorical is the easy one. Get that out of the way first. It's like enumerated values, right? A list of possible values. So think of like categories or styles or some colors, something like that, or genres for the video on demand case. Numeric that's self-explanatory. It's a numeric value that allows you to, with filters, you can do greater than, less than, equal to, things like that. Um, Native support for location information, so a lat long, is not yet supported in the service, but a lot of customers have been wanting to use recommendations in a with a like a point radius, type of constraint with a filter. It's a real common, request, but it's not yet supported in the service natively. So what a lot of customers do in this case is they already have in, say, an Elasticsearch or MongoDB, they have the ability to do geo-based searching. And so they'll search to get the candidate items using a geo search, and then they'll give those items to Personalize to re-rank based on the current user. So you combine basically a geo search with personalized ranking and Personalize.
That's pretty clever. Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, actually, my question was about Elasticsearch, and that sounds like you've got multiple modes of operation that you typically see with Elasticsearch. You'd shown one where someone did a search and it ranked results. So I assume that's
Mhm.
like search happens first in Elasticsearch. Again, you feed it over to Personalize. Is that
Yep.
like on a per page basis that you would feed Personalize sets of results, or do you try and rank the whole like result set if there were thousands of items?
the it's not practical to re-rank the whole result set.
Yeah.
That API, get personalized ranking, is the API that you use to re-rank items, and it has a limit of 500 items. So you can only send in 500 items to that API call. But as we step back and think about that, using a search engine, is most users typically don't engage with items past the first page, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so uh, with that realization, maybe you could pull back the first two pages and re-rank them and render one page, or you could just re-rank each page as they go through the results. Combining the relevancy of the search engine with the relevancy of personalization, putting those two things together, you don't want to defeat the relevancy of search by re-ranking too many items deep, right? I was looking for shoes, but you recommended something that was like 1,200 items down. That was a watch, right? But I'm telling you, I'm looking for shoes, right? So you want to have a balance between relevancy of search versus relevancy of interest.
That's awesome. Any other questions for James? My dog's got a question. You can't see him. He's off camera. His
I
question
have
was,
a
can you pet
question.
me? Go ahead, Caleb. What's your question?
James, have you had projects where like you were looking at Personalize, but then decided to go in a different direction? And what were the factors that led you to not use Personalize for a particular thing?
So where it's pretty easy to spot a personalization use case. So like a lot of customers will come and they're looking for maybe propensity or user segmentation, which isn't a good use case for Personalize as the service exists today. Or they don't have the data, right? They don't have the behavioral data, but they've got rich catalog information, right? And so maybe that's not a good fit for Personalize. Maybe it's a better fit for um, using a content-based filtering approach, as opposed to the behavioral-based approach that personalizes. Basically, it's understanding the sessions or sequences of events to understand what your next interested item will be. And so it's really understanding the use case the customer is trying to solve and what data they have available. Oftentimes customers, it's clearly a personalization use case, it's behavioral driven, but it's a new application. Maybe they're launching a new video on demand service, and so they don't have any historical data to go upon, right? And so we would work with them on an event taxonomy that represents watches of movies, how long you watched it. Maybe 80% through indicates really strong intent. with that content. They would collect events they'd launch the service and collect events over the first week or two. They'd have enough events, then they train the models and then launch personalization as a follow-on to launching their service. So that's a common pattern that we see with customers that are starting new applications or building new applications. But there are a lot of use cases that come in as personalization, but really they're like churn prediction or propensity to buy, and those maybe are better to go down the SageMaker route and build a model using a different algorithm. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of looking at the use case and what the data they have available to see if it's a good fit.
Any more questions for James?
I have another question.
Go for it, Josh.
Is there an upper limit to how many items you can have in your catalog?
The current limit on items is 750,000 unique items.
Okay. So what happens, so let me ask you this. Let's say if I get to 700,000, can I throw some off the boat that are old?
Oh yeah, of course. You can control with those data sets. So and it's not just the interactions data set. So that interactions data set has metadata about your items, right? So that's could be 700,000. But if your interactions data set, the historical interactions, say has 1 million distinct items in that over time, your users have interacted with 1 million items because maybe your catalog has rolled over, you've dropped some products. Those items will still be in your historical interactions. So you would have to upload your interactions data set in bulk that would only represent a distinct number of 700,000 or below 750,000, but in your case, 700,000, in order for that model to train.
I see. Okay.
On the subject of limits, for the interactions data set, Personalize will bring in the 500 million most recent interactions. So if you have 1 billion interactions, it will still train, but Personalize will only consider the most recent 500 million. And the reason why it works that way is as we expand those limits, if the data is already there, we want to train on it. We don't want you to have to hack that down, so that when the limit increases, we wish that data was there, right? It's already there for us to sort of expand our limit into.
And that's the interaction data that Personalize is storing that we don't have access to export yet.
You don't have access to export, but you can re-upload the historical data, and it replaces what was there before. Okay. So that's a way for you to sort of roll your interactions as sort of a sliding window over time.
That's been super enlightening about the service.
Yeah, I'm going to try some stuff tomorrow.
Cool. Was this helpful for you guys? Is this the right depth and what you guys look for? Okay. Yeah. It's the first time I've given this kind of user talk before, so.
No, I think it was a good format, like the kind of let's define some stuff up front, tell you what the words all mean, and then then let's just show you like a real thing running. I think that was super helpful.
Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I somewhere I must have missed it in docs. I didn't realize there was like a campaign versus like the batch operation, and that's a pretty big distinction, especially from a cost perspective.
Yep.
So maybe can you tell us or let us in on any other like roadmap type items, what's coming down the pipe that we could look forward to in Personalize?
So we've talked about the data set piece of being able to pull your items, users, and interactions back out of the service. And so that's been a popular request. The service also is, you can think of it as optimizing for click-throughs, right? For clicks. Or optimizing for engagement, right? Because we're taking in that behavioral data to predict how they're going to behave in the future. And a lot of customers are wanting to influence the relevancy of those predictions by outside influences, such as business metrics or business objectives. And so you'll see the service being able to take in more inputs and control from the customer, being able to influence or nudge, if you will, the recommendations based on maybe some business priorities or business metrics that aren't purely based on behavior. we'll continue to work on scaling, improving, the efficiency of the service, all those sort of internal, aspects. But those are a few areas that we'll be focusing on.
All right, I got at least one more question, and I gotta go. What kind of performance can people expect from that API as they,
Mm.
because you're sending something to Elastic, waiting for that, and then
Yep.
you got to send it over to Personalize and wait for that, and then you still got to send a response back to the end user. I mean,
Yep.
what kind of round trips on requests are you seeing?
Yeah, I will say for that retail demo store implementation is it's not optimized. So there's a lot of efficiencies that can be gained there. For instance, it's making a round trip for each product detail call in that particular case from the web app to the backend. So not that great. But your question on campaigns for latency is generally we don't have SLAs on latency, but what we generally see at P95 for say SIMs, the similar item recommendations is in the mid double-digit milliseconds, so anywhere in the 40 to 60 milliseconds. User personalization is going to be between like 50 and 80 milliseconds, and then personalized ranking is a little bit longer, so that's going to be the high double and low triple digits milliseconds for that, because we're re-ranking potentially up to 500 items, right? So that's just a more intense process, but it's intended to be used in a real time, right? We want it to be part of a
Right.
call, rendering a page. Some customers do use batch recommendations and batch, say, the similar item recommendations in something like Dynamo or Elasticsearch or Elasticache, sorry, to get single millisecond latency on those lookups.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Any more? My logo just changed on me. Thanks, Mary Beth. Any other questions for James? Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Really, really appreciate you coming and presenting at IndyAWS. Hopefully, so James will review the recording to make sure that it looks good, which I don't think there should be any trouble. And then we should get this up on the IndyAWS YouTube channel for folks who want to review it later. The demo, I guess the links were in the video. Can we send out a link to that GitHub
Yeah, absolutely.
repository for
Yep.
the retail store,
Mhm.
so that way all the members can check that out as well? Otherwise, if people have questions, who do they talk to at AWS about Personalize?
So the usual support channels that you would use. There's also samples out on GitHub. So you can post issues out there. So we're pretty active on those repos. So if you have questions about the retail demo store, you can post them there.
Awesome.
We have a YouTube channel as well that does deep dives on all aspects of the service. So we just did that a couple months ago. And
I just
so,
subscribed to it because I saw
yeah,
it's like, that's really cool.
we're going to be doing a whole nother sequence of videos that go deeper on all those subjects. And so definitely check that out.